Yeah, that was you. What's that? Bridget. Mother Teresa, I remember that. Okay. Do you have children? Oh, good. Okay, that makes it easier. Okay. And then Rhett. And then Peter. Is that right? Okay. And then at the back, I don't know that lady's name in the pink shirt. Oh, Elena. And Yuri. Okay, sorry. That's my big mistake. And then next to you, I'm not sure those two ladies' names. Melissa? Meryl? Maris. Merritt. Maris. Okay. Maris and what was the other lady's name? Okay. Melissa and Maris. I got to get it right. Otherwise, I'm going to get it wrong every single time. Okay, Peter, Mary, Elizabeth. And Barbara and Cheryl and Polly and Kelly. Okay? And I almost know everybody at the back. Is that Bonnie at the back? Yes. Okay. Okay. We're here this morning. Well, we need to know each other's names. My name is Mike, and this is Rene. Okay? And we hope you enjoy our time together. We're going to be sharing some things on Prescription for Love. One of the books that I always recommend for people and for my students when I was teaching, wherever I go, I share this book with people. It's called Help in Daily Living. Have you heard of this book before? Any of you? Okay, Cheryl has, because Cheryl was at a 1 week in paradise, and I gave her a copy. Okay, so see, I do, I give them away. So there's lots on that table over there, and if they run out, you can go to our little booth over there in the cafeteria and take one for yourself, okay? And if you really like reading it, come and take another one to give to someone else. Okay, this book, if you're ever feeling down or discouraged or life doesn't make sense, does that ever happen to you? Does that ever happen to you? Yes, okay. Read this book. That's what I do. So you can imagine how many times that has happened to me because I've read so many of these copies that I wear out the cover and then I get another one, okay? And so that means, whoa, something happened. Something happened in the printing of this one.
Oh, it's upside down.
Some of the pages are upside down. Okay. That's strange. So you have to turn the book over. But it only happens every now and then. Someone's messing with us. Okay, so these, I won't tell you, but these were printed by It Is Written Canada. Okay, so there you go. And you should have a little notepad. If you don't have a notepad and a pen, there's some over here. So if you came in a little bit late, come and get a notepad and pen. And also there's a little brochure there to tell you a little bit about It Is Written Canada, to know who we are and what we do. How many of you do not know anything about It Is Written Canada? Some of you? Okay, well, almost everyone. Okay, so our mission is to connect Canadians to the abundant life found in Jesus in a way that is personal and relevant. And what we do with the televising of these programs, I first watched It Is Written when I was a little boy growing up in the orphanage. And so I would sit there in what they called the playroom, and we would all have to sit there and look up at this television screen, and we watched It Is Written. I didn't know anything about the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I grew up, in this orphanage, but I also went to the Anglican Church because that's where they would send us. And so we went to the Anglican Church, and I didn't know anything about this until my grandmother started to, study around, and she went to all these different churches. And she went to the Pentecostal church and the Greek Orthodox church, and, you imagine she went to it. And then one day, she told me, what's that?
You watched George Vanderman.
I did watch George Vanderman. That's right, on It Is Written. And so she one day told me she knew about the Sabbath and that it was on Saturday. And that was really amazing. And then the second thing she told me was that when you die, you don't go straight to heaven, that you're asleep until Jesus comes. And so she was telling me all these things and teaching me things from the Bible, and I was a little kid, and she would take me out of the orphanage, and she would take me to her place for the weekend, and then she would, of course, have to take me back. And I didn't like the idea of not playing hockey on Sabbath, on Saturday. But I knew that what she was saying was true. And what really convinced me, I'll tell you, this sounds kind of weird, but what really convinced me was that she took me to a Seventh-day Adventist church, first time. And the sermon I heard was on how bad cheese is for you. And that was the whole sermon. How bad, did you know that cheese was bad for you? Well, it's true. And so I listened to this sermon, and I knew that if they knew everything about the Sabbath and the state of the dead and cheese, they knew everything. And that this must be the right church. So that's how my thinking went as a young kid. And so eventually, anyway, it's a long story, but I'll tell you the rest of it another time. Okay, so we do these programs. Here's the counsel that we get. Men are needed who pray to God for wisdom and who, under the guidance of God, can put new life into old methods of labor and can, what does that say? Invent new plans and new methods of awakening the interest of church members and reaching the men and women of the world. So it's a little bit different if you watch us now, because we do these programs where we actually interview people and we get their stories. When you listen to a sermon, what part do you usually remember a week later? The story and the illustrations. Did Jesus ever preach just pure doctrine, or did he tell stories? He told stories. And so we like to listen to people's stories. And when people listen to those stories, we've actually had an increase of 25%, 26%, sometimes over the last 4 years, viewership. And so that's a huge increase. And so you've had more people watching. Why? Because I think they like the stories. So we're reaching about 4.1 million people. That's a huge number of people, okay? And I'm always amazed by that God is using that avenue to reach people.
And we really like this quote in the Desire of Ages because it really goes with what we're doing. Our confession of his faithfulness is heaven's chosen agency for revealing Christ to the world. That which will be most effectual is the testimony of our own experience. These precious acknowledgments to the praise of the glory of his grace have an irresistible power that works for the salvation of souls. And so we've seen this because, not everyone can agree. We all have different opinions about certain Bible verses.
Well, have you ever attended a Sabbath school where everyone agrees? No. Okay.
and so, but no one can disagree or have a different opinion of your story, because your story is your story.
Yeah.
And how God affected and changed your life. That is powerful. And so by doing these testimonies, we have seen it really speaks to people to see how God has changed people's lives.
Yeah, like in one little church in Northern Ontario, they had a gentleman who just walked into church, and they said, welcome. He says, this is the first time I'm going to church on Saturday. And they said, well, how did you hear about it? They said, well, I watched Mike and Rene Lemon on It Is Written. And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, well, they're guests. They're always talking about how they learn about the Sabbath. And so I didn't even know about the Sabbath. Mm-hmm. And so when people are listening to a story, they say, oh, that changed that person's life. Mm-hmm. I wonder what it's like. And then they start to study the Bible. That's an interesting way of hooking people and their interests. So there's about a dozen different networks worldwide that cover the program and that carry the program. And so here in Canada, if you don't watch it on Saturday morning on CTV at 11 o'clock, that's okay. There's a number of other times throughout the week that it comes on, also on CTV and other stations. And online, we're reaching 216,700 online users with combined social media initiatives, and that's ongoing. That is really a huge number, and so we're very thankful for that. So we're sharing with you one of the things that we do, and that is our Prescription for Love program, and we usually do it, as I said yesterday, with a couple named Doreen and Marlon Cliff, and they have an amazing story of how God took them from a failed marriage relationship that was 25 years that they were married, and she just walked out on him, and she said no. And they had two small children, and she's like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done. And how he pursued her and won her love and won her back. It's a beautiful story, and also they've become marital counselors. So it's an amazing story. So one of the things we shared with you yesterday is that we have this Prescription for Love program that we're doing in Costa Rica, and that's a whole week. So and it's lots of fun. So it won't be just sitting, it'll also be doing activities and going out and doing zip lining and lots of things in Costa Rica. While it's cold and snowy in Canada, it's sunny over there during February 11th to 18th. And one of the things we want to make you aware of, and if you go to our little booth there in the cafeteria, you'll see a Canada-wide call to prayer. And so I put this forward to the members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada, and they said, please do this. Why? Because our number one prayer request is to pray for our children to come back to the Lord. And so we set this time aside, September 30th to October 7th. You can pray on your own during that time, fast and pray if you choose to do so, or you can join us. We're going to be broadcasting some programs on television during that time. We're also going to be online and having a Zoom call where we are praying with people. So you can join that and keep an eye on our website. And one last thing that we wanted to advertise with you before we get into the seminar itself is a program called 1 Week in Paradise. And our next one is coming up October 29 to November 5th. Cheryl and her husband Dave were there. Ricky and Stephanie were there. These are two pastors' families. And it was amazing. You can ask them about it. We've been doing it for 3.5 years. And it has steadily brought people to come to church. Before, we would do health seminars, and it wouldn't cross over into people actually coming into the church. They would be there for the health seminar, and they'd be thankful for that. So we're very intentional about sharing Jesus at these programs. And so a good large percentage of the people that come there are not Adventists, and so we've actually had to open up a church in Newmarket in Ontario. And then there are a number of other places throughout Canada where they're opening up a program called 1 Week in Paradise. Tell them a little bit about it.
So this is an immersion program. So the guests arrive on a Sunday, and they stay for the whole week until the following Sunday. And Mike and I do the spiritual side as well as the relationship side. But we partner with health professionals. So there's naturopathic doctors, there's regular doctors, there's nutritionists, massage therapists, hydrotherapists. And so there's a whole team, and we all work together and take care of the guests. So it's basically like
a hospital.
It's a hospital and a hotel. Yeah. And so every single day you receive treatments, massage, some kind of hydrotherapy treatment. You do exercises, so there's personal trainers that work on an exercise program. So it is an immersion program. So you stay at Camp Frenda in Ontario. So, So this is another quote from Desire of Ages. During his ministry, Jesus devoted more time to healing the sick than to preaching. His miracles testify to the truth of his words, that he came not to destroy, but to save. And then I can see in the Lord's providences that the medical missionary work is to be a great entering wedge whereby the diseased soul may be reached. And this is incredible to see right in front of our eyes how the health message is the right hand of the gospel. And to see people coming to Jesus because they are getting healthy and we are helping them. It's beautiful to see.
And one last reason, and this is the quote that I'll share with you. I wish to tell you that soon there will be no work done in ministerial lines but medical missionary work. So let's pray together. Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, that you've given us this time together when we can connect with you, when we can experience, as the scriptures say, before Jesus comes, the spirit and power of Elijah to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers, when we can experience family connectedness, when we can experience relational, marital connectedness that becomes a light and a sanctuary for others so that they can see and be drawn to you and your great love for them and for each one of us. In Jesus' name, amen.
So yesterday morning we were looking at the power of words, how powerful our words are. He who keeps his tongue keeps his life and saves himself from destruction.
That's quite a statement, right? He who keeps his tongue keeps what? His life. Wow. You can save your life by be careful of what you say, right? And saves himself from destruction. So there's something that happens with our words. Why didn't someone tell us this a long time ago? Because our words can get us into a lot of trouble. They can also save our lives. So saving, right? Keeps his tongue, keeps his life.
And more words of wisdom from Proverbs. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger.
So, what's that word? A soft answer. A soft answer. So soft, this is what we want. Soft, gentle, when we start up our conversation, sharp, or soft and gentle, very important. One last quote from the scriptures. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. So, do you like to cook? Yes? Any of you like to cook? I like to cook. As my wife said yesterday, she doesn't like to cook. Our daughters like to cook. And I truly do. And sometimes I maybe put a little bit too much salt in, only because I like salt, and Rene doesn't. Most times. Okay. Rene doesn't mind because she loves salt. But some folks think it's a little bit more than they are used to. But have you ever had bland food that has no salt? Yeah. That's not so good, is it? So what is Paul writing here? He's saying, make it so that your words are palatable. You get what I'm saying? Make it so your words are palatable, so that people can digest what you're saying and they're not put off by what you're saying, right? So it's not bland, but it's also not, too oversalted. I mean, that's not good, but and not so spicy that it's so hot that it's just like, oh, okay. So and what is salt? Salt, actually, in the spirit of prophecy, is defined as love. Yeah. Have a little bit of love sprinkled in with your words, okay? And so isn't it nice when people talk to you with very loving conversation? I remember going to the South for the very first time, Southern United States, and everyone calls you darling and sweetheart, and they call you these very endearing names. You're just like, I don't know you, but you're really nice to me. And it's wonderful. So we shared this with you yesterday. You will become in your life what you do with your love, right? You will come in your life what you do with your love. And your love, how did we measure it? 3 things we mentioned yesterday. Number 1? You remember those 3 things? Time, that's right. So time is an indication of love, of what you love. What's the other one? Your?
Energy.
And your, okay, energy I think goes along with passion, but what's the other one? Your money, right? Your resources or your treasure, right? Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So your treasures of time, energy, and money. Those are indications of that. And then we talked about the proven principles for achieving happiness in marriage. And the first 3 that we mentioned yesterday, you remember what they were? I know you, I love you, and I am here for you. those principles of having, those are principles that you actually establish this knowledge base in your relationship. I know you, I love you, and I am here for you. Or, as we call it, making love maps, an internalized map of the other person's life. I love you, fondness and admiration, so you're cherishing this, and I'm here for you, turning towards instead of away.
So, how well do you know each other? So, we're going to give you a question, and you're just going to discuss it. We'll give you a few minutes just to discuss this amongst yourselves.
Just one question.
So, yeah. And you can, if you don't have a partner here or a spouse, you can just speak to whoever is close to you, like a friend. So here's your question. What do you like to do for fun?
What do you like to do for fun? Okay, go ahead. That's a simple answer because you know each other very well. Okay. Good. Good. So, what do you like to do for fun? What do you like to do for fun, love?
Well, I enjoy hiking or running or doing anything outdoors. So I enjoy doing that.
And I enjoy doing that as well. I also enjoy reading and writing. Any of you are outdoors people? Okay. Oh, quite a
there's a lot.
Any of you readers, writers, do that for enjoyment? Okay. What else was not mentioned? Singing. Okay, both of you like singing. Okay, Karen and Larry, they love singing and playing instruments. Okay. Yes?
I like doing anything with my wife together.
Oh, good.
Whatever it is.
Yes.
But I don't want to go to Costa Rica alone, but I want to go with her.
Okay. That's a good answer. I like that. But I can agree with that. I just enjoy spending time with my wife. And that's a good thing because we work together. But it's wonderful that you enjoy being together. Okay? That's a good thing. Okay. Any others? Fun is an important thing. Is fun important? Yeah, fun is very serious. You need to seriously have fun in your life. If you don't, we mentioned this yesterday, those who are into play study, which is actual study, which is a research area, they tell us that the opposite of fun or the opposite of play is not work. The opposite of play is depression. Because my work is fun for me, actually. Any of you do fun work you enjoy doing? Yes, okay. And I was speaking to Leo yesterday, and I said, because he told me he was a mechanic. I said, did you enjoy that? He says, I better have because I've done it all my life. So, which is a good thing.
So imagine a satisfied couple. They both say they are satisfied, and by everybody's observation, they have a great relationship. what percent of their problems do you think they should be able to solve?
So what do you think?
If you look at this couple and you say, wow, they look so happy,
They-
what percent of their problems do you think they should be able to solve?
And they say they're satisfied in their relationship, they're very happy, everyone thinks they're happy, they look happy, so yeah. What do you think? 100%? Okay. 75?
75? Okay.
95? 50%. Okay.
Okay.
Kind of a coin toss, heads or tails. Okay. Let's try this.
Longitudinal studies reveal that couples tend to have the same ongoing conflicts throughout their marriage, regardless of how happy they said they were.
Okay. So in Gottman studies, and we're talking about over 40 years of research watching couples in conflict, he found that 69% of all conflicts in marriage are never solved. Never solved. 69% of all are never solved. Is that encouraging? So, what percentage of problems will happy couples be able to solve? 31. 31%. So people look at that and they say, wow, what's the use of getting married, right? Or how do people stay married? How come everyone's not getting a divorce? Here's the point. You don't have to solve all your problems to have a great relationship. Is that true? So what are you focusing on? I think this is the key. And how do you do it? So this is what Gottman says. He says that when you're in conflict, it's like two fists hitting each other like this. Okay? And when those two fists are hitting each other like this, he says inside of those fists is a dream. This person has a dream, and that person has a dream, and they hold on to their dreams, and they're not going to open up their hands because they don't feel safe in this relationship. They're not going to open up and show what the dream is inside. They're just protecting. Does that make sense? So what do you have to do? You have to have dialogue. You have to get to know each other. And as you get to know each other, you're opening up. Now that's why Rene and I play this game as we travel in the car called the Love Maps game. So we get these little cards, and you can get them as well from the Gottman Institute. Just go online, and they're called Love Map cards. And those are real intimate questions, personal questions. Sometimes you're listening to the question, you're thinking, oh, do I really want to answer this? And some of them are called open-ended questions. Those are a little easier to answer. Those are a little bit more, not as personal as they are kind of, theoretical or, hypothetical. Like we said yesterday, if you were the richest person in the world, what would you do with your money? That's not so hard to answer. It might be for some. So those little cards, we get to know each other. So you have this dialogue that eventually opens up this safe space for you. And so we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about conflict more in the week and how to get the other person to kind of open that hand so that you become a dream catcher. So when you're seeing a conflict, when you're seeing a hot spot in the relationship, you don't keep grinding that hot spot. You rather talk through it, and you're gentle. Gentle is, I think, the key word there.
Because there are going to be perpetual problems in the marriage, and we'll give you some, or not just even in marriage, but in relationships, whether it be with your siblings or with your children or with your co-workers or even with other church members. So there are perpetual problems, and we'll give you examples of those right now, but we don't want those perpetual problems to become gridlock problems where the fists are always going to be closed, and there's no way that you're going to get those fists open. So we want to solve them with dialogue instead of them getting stuck in that gridlock. We don't want to go there with a gridlock situation. So yeah, some perpetual problems, and many of you might be able to relate to at least one of them. The first one is one's early and the other's late. One is organized, and the other a little more disorganized and sometimes even messy.
Let's not use the word messy, okay? That's not a nice word. Let's just say fashionably comfortable, right?
Okay. One is a spender and the other a saver. One is strict in their parenting and the other one a little bit more lenient. One loves socializing and the other would rather be at home. And then the last one loves camping and the other loves hotels or would prefer glamping.
So those could be perpetual problems, or they can just be perpetual differences, okay? And those perpetual differences, how do you deal with them? How do you deal with that so that it doesn't create gridlock, so that you can actually love one another? Are these going to go away? No. So how do you learn how to, instead of solve, but resolve, so that you can get along, so that you can say, okay, this is the person I've married. And guess what? If you don't have that problem and you married someone else, you would have another one, okay? So don't think that there's, grass is greener somewhere else. It's not the way it works. And it just doesn't work that way. So in stable relationships, it turns out that the ratio of positive to negative interactions is what we found yesterday, 5 to 1. 5 positive for every 1 negative. So 5 times as many positive interactions to negative interactions. Okay.
Negative comments or gestures. So a gesture would be like rolling of their eyes or huffing or turning away or just ignoring and
or positive gestures too, but these are negative gestures.
Yeah,
okay.
these are negative comments or gestures. Have a far greater ability to inflict pain and damage on a relationship than words of affirmation or gifts or acts of service do to heal and bring closeness. So this is the words of affirmation. How many of you are familiar with the 5 love languages?
Okay.
Okay, so the words of affirmation.
Absolutely. So we want to make sure that we realize that the fragility of the other person's heart and be very careful with the words that we use. So in relationships where couples are headed towards divorce, or as Gottman would say, cascading towards divorce, the ratio is 0.08 to 1. Okay? That's more negativity to positivity.
So for a relationship to feel right, there has to be a very rich climate of affection, humor and fun, intimacy, and empathy.
Okay.
So those things are important.
So the fun aspect, we'll talk a little bit more. We've already talked about it a bit, but we can go into a little bit more about how the human brain works and needs fun, needs play, needs non-purposeful behavior and actions, just for the fun of it. So when couples are on vacation, the ratio needs to be even richer. It needs to be closer to 20 to 1. So during those times when you're actually enjoying your time together.
And so a positive could just be like a touch or a hug or a wink or, anything like that. That would be seen as a positive. So not necessarily words, but gestures too that are positive. So does this mean couples should eliminate all negativity from their relationship?
What do you think? You can't, okay? So is conflict, let me ask this question, is conflict necessary? Yes, okay. Will it happen? Yes. Is conflict always negative? No. So conflict sometimes is absolutely necessary. Why? Because we are different. But how do we do the conflict? What does it look like when you do that conflict? That's the important question. That's the important skill that we're learning right, is how to do the conflict, how to move into that. So the answer, of course, is no. These hurt feelings are feelings of sadness, and they help couples to honestly confront one another when they are hurt or saddened or angry, to discuss how they can avoid hurting one another in the future. I think that's important, right? So if you just bottle it every single time you feel hurt or angry or discouraged, then that creates more of a problem. Because then when it does come out, if it ever does, then the other person's like, whoa, I never knew you felt that way, right? So we do need to discuss these things. There are many things as a pastor that I've heard people tell me that they never shared with their spouse their entire married life. And I'm thinking, why? Well, I just wanted to keep the peace. And I'm like, really? Yeah. So sometimes keeping the peace doesn't keep the peace because it creates ulcers. It creates all kinds of problems within us. And stress is so hard on you as a person. So you really need to. That's a terrible place to be.
That's why the discussion and the dialogue is so important.
Yeah.
So Mark always teases me because he said that our house, because I'm a clean, neat freak, everything has to be organized.
She's very good at cleaning everything, and she tidies up everything, and she's good with that. That's wonderful. I'm not always like that.
No, you're not. So the house, but Mark, so everything has to have its place. And this is something that we've had to discuss in dialogue, because I will come into the bathroom or wherever and there's stuff all over the counter. And he's got his own box in the cupboard where he can put all his stuff, but no, everything is all over the counter. His desk at the office, there's papers everywhere.
See my side?
Everywhere.
Right. This is just one space, but if it gave me some time, you would have papers everywhere. But I know where they all are.
That's what amazes me. He
Don't-
knows if he's looking for something, he knows exactly where that is. And so I've learned that that if he doesn't see something, it's not there. So he has to see it, because that's just the way he works and the way he functions. And so I was born and raised in South Africa, and so my mess tolerance is very low because things were always cleaned and organized. Even though we didn't do it ourselves, we had maids to do it, because that's what life is like in South Africa. And so because of that, I always grew up with things organized and structured. And it's also my personality. My dad is very much like that too. Everything has its place. Whereas Mike, on the other hand, didn't grow up like that because he was in an orphanage. And so if he doesn't see it, it's not there.
There's some good reasons. So we've had some discussions on this point, okay? And it's a good discussion. So when Rene first met me, I'm teaching, she's teaching, we're both teaching in South Africa. We were at a government school, it was a high school, and she would come into my classroom, and my desk would be piled a few inches thick with all my notes and everything. And so she saw this, and she thought, I'm going to help him to organize his life, okay? This is before we got married, okay? So she bought some files, and she filed everything and put it away in the cupboard. Then she had to teach me where everything was so that I could keep... It was nice to have a clean desk, but I didn't know where anything was. So I was like, what is this? So I can give you some good reasons, and we'll go further into this as we go along. So this is a kind of an area that created some conflict, but definitely nothing that was a serious problem, okay? And how you deal with that I think is important.
Because of the reality that it is impossible to completely eliminate disappointment and negativity from a marriage, there is a need to continually renew the courtship or the friendship.
Yeah. And how do you do that? As we said, putting aside time. Having those times where you actually date. Maybe a date night every single week. That's an idea, okay?
Really?
It's a good idea. I
Every
like it.
week?
Every week.
Okay, Ephesians 4:26 says, "Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger."
So there's 3 commandments there in that verse. The first one is, be angry. Can you see that? Wouldn't you need to be angry if you saw injustice? So if you're driving your car and you see in the car next to you a father beating his child, punching, wouldn't you want to get out and save that child's life? Would you be angry? You should be. Okay? Is that correct? Yes. So there's a righteous indignation. Was Jesus ever angry? Yes. Should he be? Yes. When he saw injustice, there is anger. So there's a commandment. Be angry and do not sin. So that's a difference. So it's a different kind of anger. To be angry and not sin is something where it comes out, but it doesn't come out in a way that destroys relationships, destroys people. Right? So Jesus wasn't there to be rude. He wasn't there to I just have to give you a piece of my mind. No. He was putting things right. And so there are times where you're angry, and you can express it. Be careful with your words. Do not sin. But then it says, the third thing is, do not let the sun go down on your anger. And so deal with it. Sometimes you have to walk away because you're so angry. You don't want to have a storm of words coming out. And so you walk away, you think through it, maybe you craft the kind of words that you want to say and frame it in the way that you would like to, so that you don't afterwards have a bigger mess on your hands. Okay.
So this is a quote from Gottman in the 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. If there is a silver lining to your partner's sadness, fear, and anger, it is that by listening to it, you strengthen the trust between you. So it's so important to listen. Yesterday I mentioned that we need to learn how to listen with our hearts. And actually the middle word of heart is ear. And we have 2 ears. So we have to really listen and be slow to speak. So listen more and speak less, especially when it comes to our children.
So what's that verse? Swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. That's in James. Okay? We talked about that yesterday. So experiences that generate the most negative emotions also have the capacity to be honest with each other. I know that those are tough conversations, but to be honest with each other is very, very helpful. Okay, look at this. This is Gottman's studies. He says, by observing couples' interactions during the last trimester of pregnancy, they were able to predict the child's temperament just by studying how the parents argued or didn't in the last trimester. Wow. So that has an effect on the temperament of the child? Okay.
Children raised in homes where there was great marital hostility had chronically elevated levels of stress hormones compared to other children. As teenagers, these children suffered far more from truancy, depression, peer rejection, behavioral problems, especially aggression, low achievement at school, and even school failure.
So you can imagine that if you grew up in a home like this, as a child, you would be sometimes either prone to emulate that, to model that in your relationship so you would be angry or have those kinds of feelings, or you would be on the other side afraid of it. So afraid of it that you couldn't open up. That's why we need this gentleness in our relationships. Gentleness to be able to open up. So children suffer when they are caught in the crossfire of an unhappy marriage. And definitely that was the case in my home with my parents. They were a disaster. Okay, so my father was an alcoholic. My mother suffered from the demons of depression. And so there was what you would call a dysfunctional home. And when you have that dysfunctional home, how do you yourself actually become healthy? You have to pursue it. And of course, being born again helped me. My Heavenly Father helped me to learn these things. But it is hard work to become healthy. Is that true? It is hard work. And you have to pursue it. And it's hard work to pursue that within a loving relationship as well. To trust and to know that the other person is strong enough to be able to take your dysfunction, but not always take it in the sense that you just, gush it over, but you learn how to carefully craft your words so that you're honest, but you're also loving and in the way that you express it. So Gottman talked about two types of marriages, the masters and the disasters, okay? The masters and the disasters. The masters, as we said, were a ratio of 5-to-1 in their positivity. After 2 failed marriages, and then finally with Julie, he's been with her for over 30 years. Okay.
So these are the big 2 differences between the masters and the disasters. The masters look for things to appreciate.
Okay.
And this is not just, as I mentioned earlier, with our spouses, but also with our children, with our co-workers. Whereas the disasters look for the other's mistakes. So we can either appreciate and look for things to appreciate, or we can look for others' mistakes. So this is, there was an accountant, and it was his job to find all the details and to find everything that was wrong and to find mistakes. He got paid to do that.
He was an auditor.
He was an auditor, that's right. And so he decided he was going to make an Excel spreadsheet. And on this spreadsheet, he was going to make this for his wife to tell her about all her mistakes. Right?
That's what he got paid to do.
He got paid to do.
He
and
was
so
good at
he
that.
thought he was doing the right thing by telling her what all her mistakes are. Do you think that went down well? Yeah, no. It didn't end well at all.
It ended in divorce. So that's the difficult thing, is that we are, when you're focusing on the negative, you're putting the other person down. Of course, that's not going to end well. But when you're focusing on the positive, you bring out the best. When you look for the best in the other person, you bring out the best from the other person. So.
And so the masters had a 5-to-1 ratio. They also made sure that they looked for things to appreciate. And then the one word that described them too, that the masters used all the time, and Mike and I have mentioned this, is to be gentle. They were very gentle with one another, and their startup was very gentle.
Yeah, startup is the first part of your conversation. Very gentle. So, have you ever played soccer? And those who are really good at it are really gentle the way they kick the ball, right? But they kick the ball. Okay? With the disasters, they see their partner as the ball. You get what I'm saying? And they're not very gentle. But with the masters, they see the conflict as the ball. Right? They see the problem. There's a difference. There's a big difference there. They're not focusing on the other person. So we wrestle not against flesh and blood. We're not fighting against one another. We're both on the same team. If you lose, I lose. If you win, I win. So we're both on the same team. To come to that agreement and say, we are together in this, we're not going to go down, because if we go down together. So the attitude of these masters is this: when things go wrong, when the other person is not behaving the way that they normally behave, here's their attitude.
They have this kind of attitude. That's odd. I don't understand why he's behaving like this. It's completely out of character. I may not be able to decode their behavior, but I'm going to choose to believe the best about them and try to understand.
Right. So if someone's carrying on about, the way that something works, maybe the microwave, you don't do this when you put things in the microwave, it's just going on, you're just like, I don't know why she's getting on about the microwave, but it's okay. Maybe she didn't sleep well last night. Maybe, but you choose to think the best about them. And when you choose to think about the best about them, then you bring out the best in them. If you turn on, and you take off when the other person takes off, that's not really good. You're going to be flying in the wrong direction together.
So, here's a question. Are all negative interactions equally corrosive?
Or put it a different way, are their negative interactions more corrosive than others? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Some negative interactions are more corrosive than others, and we're going to talk about those tomorrow in detail. And those are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, okay? And those 4 horsemen are criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. So we'll look at those 4 horsemen tomorrow. We have 2 books that we want to give away, and we don't have them in front of us right now, but we will give them to those who get them. And
okay, so I can run and go get them and let's pray and end off.
Well, no, we'll get them and we'll give them to the people who get them. But you tell me who gets the books. Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. The first one is who has been married for the shortest time?
The shortest time among us. Now, how are we going to figure that out? So, 10 years.
Is there anyone that's been married for less than 10 years?
Less than 10 years.
So how many?
How many years, folks?
3
years. Okay. We're going to give you a book.
Okay.
And it's a good book. A very good book. Which one are we going to give them? The
seven
principles for making
yes.
marriage work. Very good.
Okay.
You'll enjoy that. Okay?
And then the other one is we said whose anniversary is closer to today's date, and then we had 3 couples whose anniversary was close to that same date. So we don't want to make the same mistake. Yeah.
But we can try it, and let's see if that works.
Okay.
Okay?
So today's the 25th of July.
25th of July.
Whose anniversary is
close to this
Is there anyone who's
Ma'am?
Is it on the 25th?
July? When? 3rd. Okay. Anyone closer to
Is there anyone
this?
that's closer to that? Okay.
Ma'am? 8th. Okay.
July 8th.
Anyone else?
Anyone closer to July 8th?
Okay. 7th of August. Yes, you would be closer to today's date. That's right. Okay,
Yeah.
Excellent. Yuri and Helena.
Elena.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Anyone else closer? Okay.
Victor. July 23. Okay.
Oh.
Yes. What's the date today?
The 25th. So
Yeah, you got it. Okay. So Victor. Is there anyone else? Okay. So we'll be back again tomorrow. As I said, you can be free to come and get a copy of Help in Daily Living. As I said, this is the book. If you're ever feeling down or discouraged in any way, or life doesn't make sense, this is the book I always read. And so I'll give you a free copy of it. It's over here. And if we run out over here, come to our booth over there, and you can get one at the cafeteria. If you want to know more about Israel in Canada, we've got these. We've got little notepads, so you can take notes when you come to us next time. We'll have some over there, and you've got some pens. So we want to finish off by asking you to pray together with someone who is with you, a friend, a family member, someone else. So take a moment to pray.